and how to adjust their lessons so that those students can get a better grip on it. Because if you, I mean, people that speak English fluently, the language and the vocabulary in, say, a biology classroom, it's taxing on somebody.
Yeah, it is.
So the idea that English is not your first language and then you're going into it, that makes it even harder. So there is a program for that, though.
Mrs. Hart, let me ask you a question. You were a former teacher. How did you handle languages when somebody came in who did not speak English?
We didn't have many people way back then that came in not speaking English because I was teaching in Rehoboth. It's a small town. Most of the people were born there. The ones who, we didn't have the influx that you have in there now. You didn't have the huge homes when I was teaching there. And I was teaching math and
English.
The biggest problem with the math was that I also taught mod math because we introduced it in our algebra classes way back when, and I can explain why people today can't do it. I went to a course with some of the people who didn't know how to do it, and they didn't understand the language at all. They couldn't figure out why they were doing it that way, and they were the teachers in Seekonk because they didn't know. They didn't understand the principles behind it. Once you understood the principles behind it, then you put it into English, like I had to do in my classes. I said, you don't pick up your pencil and start writing numbers. You think, and you give me an estimate of what and why you're reasoning it that way. And when you come out with an estimate, then you get your pencil and give me the exact answer. But that was the only thing. That was the language I had to work with, so not a foreign language.
You know, but basically, Ms. Hart, it has tremendously changed from the time you educated and taught versus today.
Yes, we didn't have the growth in the community, the number of people, and we did have a lot of, there were Portuguese people and farmers that lived in Rehoboth, but almost, I don't know of any children that came in that didn't have an English background as well as they went home and spoke with their parents in another language.
The other thing is what is starting, in Europe at least, and I think out here also, if you start learning a language, I don't care what it is, at home, because it was your daily, oh, this is bread, this is water, this is this and this, the language will automatically come. Right. And I'm the best example. I know my English is lousy, but I have learned the hard way.
And you learn it by hearing it more.
Not only this, you won't believe where I learned English. I went to the movies in Germany. It was all in English, and it was written underneath, and I didn't have time to read, but I was listening. And that's a lot of language you can learn through hearing it spoken by somebody else.
Well, I think that's why they're using inclusion more. Because if you're there with somebody else always speaking this other language, pretty soon you start picking up some of it. And then if you are smart enough to ask a question what it means, then maybe you have learned something and you're going to start learning the other language.
Can you foresee any changes as far as language is concerned in, let's use high school, Seekonk High School?
In the near future, no. Because what I was telling you before, what I started to tell you before is that the numbers that come up, we staff a certain amount of sections of that class. What we're finding now with the languages as they're being taught in the middle school is that now we're getting more students, so we're getting more sections. And teachers can only teach so many sections. And so now what happens to our language requirement, because they're required to complete 2 years of a world language for graduation. If you want to go to college, they like to see 3, they prefer to see 4 years of a language. So what happens now is that students that come in that have taken language at the middle school now come into, say, Spanish 2 instead of starting at Spanish 1. So we have to keep the Spanish 1 for the students that have not completed that requirement to a satisfactory degree at the middle school. We have larger numbers of Spanish 2 students, but now we have to offer Spanish 2 and Spanish 3 instead of just 1 and 2 because we have that 2-year requirement. And then if that's the case for college, we need to offer 4 and 5. So we need more classes, more teachers.
Now, are you talking Spanish or Portuguese?
Both. I'm saying Spanish, but both.
Yeah, I know, because Spanish and Portuguese is very much the same.
Base,
but however, you talk to a person from Portugal and they say, oh no, we're totally different, you know. So that's why I'm asking you so do you foresee, in other words, what you're telling me, if kids want to go to college, they have to have a certain amount of language.
Absolutely.
And
They need it to graduate from high school, but the more world language you have, the more favorable it looks for college. A 4-year institution will look at 3 years of a language and say, good, they have 3 years of a language. But then the next application comes in with 4 years of a language, and they're like, that's better.
Well, how about the one coming in with no educational language? Because the kids don't like it. They say, I'm not doing it. I don't have to.
Then they're going to have a tough time getting into college, not to mention it's a graduation requirement. So unless there's something specific that you
In other
get
words, you must.
waived, you have to study 2 years of a world language and pass those 2 years to get your diploma from Seekonk High School.
That's something I did not know. Mrs. Hart, you're involved with schools.
Okay. Something else we were saying about when he sends out the call, which is what he calls his weekly newsletter, there's another thing in there, and it's about how they are trying to work with their students that are students today, but they don't know what's coming. None of us do. But they would like to have some experience, like an internship.
I see.
And they're using that as a can a business allow some of them to come in and be a ghost and follow them around and see what's there, so they know whether or not it's something they're interested in? And they've already hired somebody to do that on top of the other teacher that they have who does set up these kinds of things. So Laura Calverley seems to be.
She's like a job coach, and she comes to us from the Attleboro Chamber of Commerce. And so there's a program through Attleboro High School. Attleboro High School is a comprehensive high school. They have your industrial arts program, things like that. We had a person last year, Amanda Loro, and she's been replaced by Mrs. Calvary. And so what she does is she connects with students and goes over job interview skills, resume writing skills, and puts them in touch with businesses so that they can go and apply for jobs, so they can go do internships. And she works hand in hand with our transition coordinator, Mrs. Janet Fitzgerald.
Is that like a trainee for a job, or is it just to learn what is going on in the world?
It's both.
Both.
Yep.
Okay. Are they getting paid?
Not usually. It usually turns into something paid afterwards. But now that's where the overlap with our transition coordinator is, because there are jobs that she can set students up with where they can go out and get paid.
Yeah.
We also have, our transition coordinator did a great job of connecting us with some grant money where we hire students during the summer. They go through the interview process with our head custodian, and they're custodians for the summer. And so they work in the building during the summer, cleaning the building and getting it ready for the next September.
That's very good. Now, you know, when you're talking about training, if you go to a doctor or eye doctor or whatever, he has another person always following. It's my intern.
Those are the professional ones.
I know,
and-
but I mean, basically, it is the same thing.
Well,
Naturally, in a different thing, but it is also, you not just become automatic a doctor because you're a doctor, but you have to go through the training. And I think what you're doing is almost the same thing for kids if they want to become a town administrator
well,
or
if they
something
don't know
like
what
this.
they want
Right.
to become,
Right.
they go and see if,
To find
I
out
don't
what I
think
like.
that.
Right.
At one time, before you came, they used to have a senior release day for seniors. And they could, on that day, go to a company or a business. We had children who went with our conservation agent and learned all about stuff and got a summer job there.
Right.
We had one that went up to the aquarium in Boston and got a job after she graduated. So I know that this was a difficult thing, because to take a senior out of a day, a whole day,
Right.
and get transportation someplace is a difficult job. But at the same time, we had that feeling before that they need some exposure. They need to get some experience. They need to see what it's like. And I think that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to talk about that.
Right.
And I think you're trying to encourage it. And then your blog saying, set your goals,
Yep.
even if you don't know
What
what
it
you're going to
is.
do later.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
and that was what his blog was this time. And it was, know what you want to do if you do know, but even if you don't know, decide how
Just-
to behave. What's your
Exactly.
behavior? What are your beliefs to get you there? And
how to dress, how to speak, how to say thank
Right.
you.
And all of those things.
All of these things.
So,
Because, you know, again, I'm throwing in things maybe I have no business doing it, but anyway, if you if you don't graduate in college in Europe, you got to go into a training. You want to be a stupid thing, you want to be a sales girl. You don't just go out of school into a department store and learn. You go for 2 years in where you get paid zilch. I mean,
it's
enough
like
that
an intern. Yeah.
yeah, worse than an intern.
Yeah.
You're doing floor cleaning, you're doing all the, you learn from
The bottom up.
bottom up. Then can get a job. Then you have a possibility of moving in a job up in a position.
Right.
If you don't have that training, you're staying put as a cleaning the floor for the rest of your life. So that I think is starting to over here, what you're saying.
Right.
And I think that's very important that, because I don't know if you know or not, but sometimes you go to a department store and there, or behind the cash register, some kids there, they can't read and they can't add. You give them $2.25, you give them $5.25, they don't know what to do with it.
right.
And
That
all-
has, I hope, with the training you are doing now, will be changing.
That's, and you know, that's somewhat of a product of our society.
Yeah, I know.
Because if you look at a cash register, if you step behind a cash register and look at a cash register these days, they're pictures of the item that you've ordered. So it's not even punching in the price. It's a picture of the item that you ordered, and you hit the picture, and then it spits out some total, you know. And if that ever breaks down, I laughed about it. I was out to breakfast with my son this past weekend, and I made him pay. He's 10 years old, so
Oh,
I
you're
said,
nasty.
I am. So he said, I said, here's the bill. How much do you need? Open my wallet and see if we have enough. And so he went through, he got all that, he went up and he gave it to him, and I walked behind him because he was a little nervous going up by himself. He took it, he took the bill, he gave her the money, and it was too much because that's the way the bills fell. And she gave it back to him, and he started to turn around, and I looked at him, I said, well, did you count it to make sure? And he looked and he saw he had the change and everything. She gave him too much change back. So he turned around, he took the dollar out, and he gave it back to her, and he said, you know, excuse me, you gave too much change. But that skill is becoming lost because you have the
Exactly.
pictures, and it's funny because I do blog a lot and I do video messages and stuff, but one of the things that I talked about in one of my blogs recently is we have to slow down if we're going to speed up. We're going too fast where we're not
Everything-
paying attention.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
we miss things. When you don't pay attention, you miss things. So
This example is people clicking and walking, crossing the street. They
Yep.
get hit. They're not looking if there's a car coming.
Right.
I mean, it's a simple thing.
Right.
But I think that's the attitude everybody has. You're sitting, going out for dinner. You're sitting against, he's playing and she's playing with the machines. What happened to conversation? What happened with, you know, being a little bit,
Communication has died.
that's something we struggle with at the high school.
Personal
So, you know, and it's always, we say you can't have phones, and schools say you can't have phones, and then parents call and argue that that's their property and you can't take that from them. What happened if it gets stolen? You have these arguments. So what we did this year, and it's been really effective, and I've gotten some emails from parents about it, how much they like it. We used to say you can't have phones. Kids would have phones. They'd try and sneak them in the hallway. And then we said, okay, you can have them in the lunchroom. So lunchroom is your time, you can have them in the lunchroom. And that rule still holds, but now we hung shoe holders, you know those shoe holders that you hang in like closets and stuff like that
Oh,
on the back
yeah,
of doors?
yeah.
And they're cell phone pockets. And they're numbered 1 to 30 for the 30 kids in each class. And as soon as the kid comes in, the teacher started from the beginning of the year in a cell phone pocket. So you're number 7, you're number 8, whatever, you put it in your pocket and you walk away, because a bunch of research just came out that showed that if students have a phone on them, and I've done some stuff with this before, but more recent stuff, if you put it on a desk face down, you're less cognitively able to focus on the task at hand, because your brain is, people say multitasking, your brain is zero sum. You have 100%. So if you're putting 20 on something, you've only got 80 to put something somewhere else. So if you turn it upside down, it distracts from you. If you take it and put it somewhere where you can see it, you're still thinking, oh, what messages am I getting? Who's snapping me? Who's tweeting me?
how fast can I answer
If you
it? Yeah.
hide it, suddenly you stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they can concentrate more on work. And we've seen a marked improvement in classrooms and stuff.
It has helped.
Absolutely. And they can they used to sign out to go to the bathroom so they could use
To
their phone in the
take
hall.
phone with them.
Now they're not allowed to sign out and go to the bathroom. They're allowed to.
Yeah,
But,
but not to
when they
take the
sign
phone.
out, the phone has to stay in the classroom.
Yeah.
And so now sign-outs have decreased. So less kids have to go to the bathroom suddenly because they don't have their phone.
Do you feel, hopefully, it
More
will
time on task?
More time, imagine that, more time